I remember hiking in the Carpathian Mountains. And on this one day, we were all the way at the peak. And it was spectacular. It was the clear, you could see 30, 40 miles far. And you had the 360 view. It was like, wow. So I tried to take it in all. And I can still feel it and see it right now. For eons, forever, people have looked to connect with God on mountaintops. And it's not different for Jesus, but before Jesus, Moses was on the mountain when he connected with the living God, where he received the 10 Commandments, the tablets. And it says he stayed up on the mountain for quite a while. And when he came down, his face radiated with God's glory. It was so much radiating that they had to put a veil on him so that people wouldn't get too blinded or too much. It was almost like too much. He reflected that glory of God in his own being. And you sometimes see people shining or radiating. There is something that they reflect that is otherworldly. Now, for our Matthew gospel, Jesus is the new Moses. So Matthew, we know, was Jewish. And Moses was for him the great figure of the Old Testament. And he sees Jesus through those eyes as the new Moses. And Jesus goes on the mountain, and there is again this otherworldly experience where the disciples are just taken, bedazzled, and the radiating, the splendor, this light, the shining is so much that they seems almost like they're out of their minds, especially when Peter says, we try to hold on to this mountain. Let us put some pedestals or some tents. Let's hold on, hold on to this experience so it's not being lost. And putting representatives of Moses and of Elijah and of Jesus right there up. And when they hear God's voice saying, this is my beloved Son, I delight in him, I please. Jesus is the apple of my eyes, basically, in our words, the voice of God. And God's voice saying, listen to him. And isn't that the invitation for all of us, to listen to Jesus? Listen to Jesus. And I think a step beyond that, recognizing that you, we are all God's beloved. God loves you like Jesus, daughter of God. God loves you like Jesus, Son of God. And that we hear that voice, and I think when that voice is at the bottom of our hearts, and when we know we're loved and held and treasured, a great foundation to have, isn't it? Especially when it's rough. Good to have that. So the word that the Greek, the Bible that Matthew uses for transfigured is metamorphosis. So metamorphosis, you hear that, the transformation that happens from a chrysalis, from a caterpillar in a chrysalis to a butterfly. So it's really being transformed, being changed inside and out. And this experience on the mountain is not unique to Moses and to Jesus. And it didn't need to be on the mountain. You remember Jacob when he was fleeing from his brother Esau. He had betrayed Esau. He ran for his life. He was so tired. He had to get some sleep, and he put a stone by his head, and he fell asleep, and he had this big dream. You know, some dreams are just small, but some dreams are big dreams that we may remember. And this was a big dream of Jacob, and he experienced heaven open and angels like walking up the stairs to heaven and angels coming down the stairs from heaven. So it was for him this heaven is open experience. And he woke up with awe, with wow, with chills, and said, God's presence is right here. This is the house of God, Bethel, house of God. And he built an altar there to remember that God is there too. You know, sometimes we think God is limited to specific places, but the experience of Jacob is like God is here. And wherever we're touched, and when we experience this awesome, this wow, some of God may be in that experience. Now, these experiences like mountaintop experiences or this experience of awe, of wonder, that's not limited to biblical times. That's going on in our lives right here and right now. Holding a newborn baby, what is that like? Wow. Especially when you're the parent of that baby. Wow. When Janine and Harry Longer got married, we did it at the marina in Sunbury. We were right there at the confluence of the northern branch and the western branch of the rivers. Family and all gathered, and at that moment, 4 geese were flying by, and they were honking out loud, 4 geese. And Janine felt it in her bones that her grandparents and her parents were present. It was one of these, wow. And the Celtic spirituality, Irish background is saying that God's world and our world, they are so intertwined and they're very close by. And sometimes the veil is lifted and we get glimpses of God's presence. We get this, wow, I didn't know God was here, like Jacob, who says it. I had no idea. It's kind of opening up. And I think deeply myself, the burning bushes, somehow these moments, they're all around us. Just sometimes we're too busy, too blind, too wrapped up in our own lives and in our own reality that we don't pay attention to them. Someone asked, well, why did people during biblical times hear God's voice so clearly and experience the presence of God so clearly? And the answer from the rabbi was, maybe we don't pay close enough attention. Maybe we're not silent enough. Maybe we're not taking ourselves enough back to make room and to get the hints and the wonders, the small things. I'll give you a personal example. 5 years ago, my mother died. I knew she was in the hospital with pneumonia. It didn't look so bad. But then I had this dream in the morning. I woke up with a dream that our son Max came with a sports car, a red sports car. And I helped Mom out of our home, and she got into the car, and Max drove off with her. Well, just a couple of hours later, I got the phone call that she had died. Now, what is that? It was like a, wow, isn't it interesting? There is so much more than science or the rational mind can get or understand. So are we open for those signs, for those wow moments that some people describe as mountaintop experiences, or this awe, this wonder, this chill, getting chills and being aware of that. And the understanding often is that children and mystics know that there is more to our reality than what we touch, sense, see, smell, and hear. But there is God's world that's almost like a parallel universe, and we're all interwoven. And the question is, are we open to that? Are we open to receive that? Now, what is common to all of these experiences? Jesus on the mountain, Moses on the mountain, this wow moment from the 4 geese flying by, or the dream that I had about Max picking up and going for a ride on a journey with my mother. What do they have in common? Well, it's the sense of awe, it's this opening, enlarging the heart, and it's also a clarity in it, a clarity in the vision of, yes, there is something greater, something of a world that is bigger, more beautiful than what I perceive and what I can understand. And that's what I think the purpose or the result of these experiences are, for us to pay attention and to discover and be aligned and aware of God's presence, and to resonate with that and let that influence ourselves. So, mountaintop experiences. What experiences did you have? I want to share one more. On April 3rd, in Tennessee, Memphis, Tennessee, Martin Luther King Jr., his last public speech. It's almost like he had a premonition that his life would not be a very long life, almost like Jesus when he was in the garden and wrestling. I do not want to go this way, but I know it won't be easy. And in that last speech, he says, just like Moses, by the way, Moses was on the mountaintop and says, I've seen the promised land. And Martin Luther King has that vision and the deep experience. And he says, I've seen the promised land. Not just seen it, I've been to the promised land. A better world is possible. I've seen it. It informs my whole being, my whole life, and it gives purpose and meaning to him and to all of us for whom he held up that vision. What are deep experiences that shaped you? And how do they inform or shape how you live?